Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Washington. I'm Anna Coyman filling in for Blake Berman tonight. This is The Hill on NewsNation. And President Trump facing mounting legal pressure over the deportation of a Maryland man to El Salvador. The White House remaining defiant against the Supreme Court ruling to bring him back.
He is an MS-13 gang member. He was engaged in human trafficking. He illegally came into our country. And so deporting him back to El Salvador was always going to be the end result.
This as billions of dollars in grants are frozen by the Trump administration after Harvard defies an order to limit activism and eliminate DEI programs. The White House citing anti-Semitism as the reason.
The president made it clear to Harvard, follow federal law, no longer break Title VI, which was passed by Congress to ensure no student can be discriminated against on the basis of race, and you will receive federal funding.
Hey, we're going to be speaking to former White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney and NewsNation contributor Chris Cillizza on this Ivy League showdown. Plus, as President Trump continues his pursuit of Greenland, tech investors are promoting the territory as a freedom city. What is it? A colony like you might find on Mars? What's this all about? We asked the former U.S. ambassador to Denmark, Carla Sands, what she thinks. And look who is stepping back into the spotlight. Former President Joe Biden giving his first major speech since leaving the Oval Office this hour. Why not all Democrats are happy about it? But we start tonight with NewsNation White House correspondent Robert Sherman on what the next steps are for the Maryland man deported to El Salvador as the judge weighs what to do with Trump's decision. Good evening, Robert.
Hey there, Anna. And a federal judge in Maryland hearing from lawyers for the Department of Justice and Kilmar Abrego Garcia saying that Abrego Garcia should be returned as the court's already ruled, rebuking DOJ's attorneys for apparent inaction to this point. Yet the legal back and forth is continuing, with family of Abrego Garcia claiming that they feel caught in the middle of what they are calling political games and want him home. But the White House today not yielding, re-upping their claim that he's a member of MS-13, though not providing specific details on that, saying that because he's considered a foreign terrorist, that information won't be shared publicly, and insisting that Abrego Garcia will not be coming back to the States.
First of all, President Bukele said that he is not going to smuggle a foreign terrorist back into the United States of America. Deporting him back to El Salvador was always going to be the end result. There is never going to be a world in which this is an individual who's going to live a peaceful life in Maryland because he is a foreign terrorist and a MS-13 gang member.
So the White House is arguing that this is out of their hands unless El Salvador decides to send him back, which to this point they've said that they won't be doing that. Whereas attorneys for Abrego Garcia are arguing that the White House should be required to formally request El Salvador return him. The judge in this case saying that the courts are now entering what they described as an intense discovery period in order to determine if the government has been acting in good faith to bring him home. Anna?
And the legal battle rolls on. NewsNation's Robert Sherman live for us. Thank you so much for that report. Well, as the United States considers deporting more illegal migrants to El Salvador, President Trump continues criticizing former President Biden's handling of the border and influx of migrants.
As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. We have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous. Not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers.
And Biden's back. There's even a book out. Let's take a look now live at Chicago. Former President Biden returning to the national stage for the first time since leaving the White House. Biden addressing disability advocates at any moment. We will dip into that once he speaks. Well, the former president speaking at this year's National Conference of Advocates, counselors, and representatives for the disabled in Chicago. Joining us now to talk more is the Democratic governor of Delaware, Matt Meyer. And over the weekend, Governor, you spent the weekend with former President Biden there for a Passover Seder. So great to see you and excited to hear your insight on today's top stories. How you doing?
Yeah, good to see you as well.
And Governor, Biden left office in January with a 36% approval rating, faced criticism from members of his own party for not dropping out of the presidential race sooner. Is your party asking for Biden to come back, or he just can't get enough?
Look, you can agree or disagree with President Biden's policies and his politics. This is a man who served Delaware for over 50 years, served our country for over 50 years. And this is a man who cares deeply for our country as a senator, as a vice president, as a president. He cares deeply as a citizen. So we expect him to be engaged. He called me on election night and said, just watch your back. I might be running against you for governor in 4 years. So.
Yeah, he'll be going till he's 100 then. Who do you think is leading the party right now, though? We've seen other Democrats like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Bernie Sanders. They're speaking at Coachella, really energizing young people, especially holding this Fight the Oligarchy town hall movement across the country, too. Is this the future of your party?
You know, you get, I know in shows like this, you get all caught up in people and who's doing what. We're laser focused on really delivering for Delawareans and Americans, showing that we can be a shining example. Our schools are really struggling here in Delaware and around the country, our public schools. We think eliminating a Department of Education is not the solution to that. We think getting resources to teachers, empowering parents, and really looking at how we build a 21st century education system. That's how we build of manufacturing here. That's how we build economies, not sort of layering new levels of taxes on every American. We think we need to look at a housing crisis, affordable housing crisis. More Americans than ever are unable to afford an American dream. I think that whoever it is, Democrat, Republican, who creates that vision for an America that truly delivers, not with policies just to win a news cycle, but true policies that deliver results for American families, that's who's going to be our leader of the future.
Look, and a lot of people are watching their wallets right now, and they're really hoping that Democrats will come up with a counter argument for Republicans, folks in your own party, as you work to rejigger the platform and your messaging too. Governor, you've said that, quote, if there is fascism, we need to call it out. We shouldn't be shy about it. Take a look at what Bernie Sanders said this weekend.
We're fighting a president who undermines our Constitution every day, whose agents are rounding up innocent people off the streets, putting them in unmarked vans and throwing them in detention centers. That is what happens in dictatorships, not democracies.
Dictator, fascism, fascist. Governor Meyer, does your party need help moving forward? Does this line help move your party forward? It didn't seem to work in November.
Well, I think when you take someone like Mr. Abrego Garcia, a legal immigrant in the country, deports him.
I think we've lost your audio. I apologize. Governor Matt Meyer, we will check back in with you if we can get that sorted out. But good interview. Thanks a lot. Joining us now to talk more here in the studio, two NewsNation contributors, also Georgetown graduates, Chris Cillizza and Mick Mulvaney, who is also a Harvard Business School alum and Trump's former White House chief of staff.
Harvard? Is that? I'm not familiar with that school.
And we were just walking down memory lane, and we went to high school near each other.
In the same area? Again, I was 30 years after you, but that's thank you for raising that point, Anna.
I'll show you my birth certificate. That is very charitable of you to say that. But let's talk about what President Trump said on Truth Social today. He took to Truth Social saying this: perhaps Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it keeps pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired supporting sickness. And here's White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt doubling down this afternoon. Listen to this.
More than $2 billion out the door to Harvard when they have a more than $50 billion endowment. Why are the American taxpayers subsidizing a university that has billions of dollars in the bank already?
All right, Mick, I'll start with you. You attended Harvard Business School.
All those
Your
schools,
reaction?
yeah, exactly right. Look, I don't understand why these universities think they have an entitlement to taxpayer money. We put strings on taxpayer money all of the time, especially domestically. And if you don't like the strings that the Congress or the administration wants to put on your money, don't take it. I recoil when I hear people say, "Oh, it's the Trump administration fighting back against free speech." No, it's not. It's just not subsidizing behavior they don't like. Harvard is free to say whatever. They're free to be as anti-Semitic as they want to be. Just don't expect taxpayer dollars to do it.
And former President Obama putting schools on notice and basically saying, listen to your gut, and kind of saying just that. Let's take a listen.
If you are a university, you may have to say, figure out, are we in fact doing things right? Have we in fact violated our own values, our own code, violated the law in some fashion? If not, and you're just being intimidated, well, you should be able to say, Well, that's why we got this big endowment.
Yeah, that's why we got this slush
He's
fund
totally
just
right.
hanging
He's
around.
right.
Chris, let's just take a look at these numbers. I'll let you weigh in just a second. But, you know, you think, when we heard about Columbia and the $400 million, we all thought that was a lot of money. Check out these billions of dollars. It's mind-blowing. Harvard University, $50.7 billion. Brown, $6.6 billion. The numbers are there on your screen. What do you make of it?
Yeah, so Trump is interesting, right? Because I think he gets the how he executes some of these things wrong, but the what, the fights he picks, I think are actually politically quite smart. USAID, just as an early example. People don't know what USAID is, and when they find out, they probably don't like it, right? I think the average person does not know that $2 billion could even be frozen to Harvard. They didn't even know $2 billion went to it.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I'm with Mick. I mean, my basic view is like, they have a $52 billion endowment. Now, not every school is even close to that, right? Georgetown, I know, it is an elite institution, but it's not on that list, and it's not even close to that list. There are reasons to fund research and do things that benefit the community, the country, and the world that often go through our academic institutions. But I would say, like, I don't want to echo Mick, but I think he's right, which is like, if you don't like the money and the strings that are attached to the money, then don't take the money. And Harvard is in a unique place.
Since Liza said nice things about me, let me see if I can make his head explode. I'm going to agree with Barack Obama. I think that's exactly right. He's like, look, this is why you've got the endowments. You don't have to rely on this government funding.
Especially for these places we're talking about, Harvard, Brown. These are not places that if you take the $2 billion out, they're all, now the endowment is wrapped up a lot in it's not all liquid. They can't just take it and move it over here. But they have $52 billion.
But what does all of this really come down to? Is it really, as the Trump administration says, is it really indeed, fighting anti-Semitism and that these universities need to do more? Or is it, as the New York Times put it today, the Trump administration sort of chipping away at the prestige and power of these institutions?
I think that the anti-Semitism is sort of the flashpoint. It's what sort of got a lot of people paying attention. There's a lot of conservatives who've been saying these places have been really, really troublesome for a long time. But now you've got large, folks who give a lot of money to the institution saying, wait a second, what have we been giving our money to? Especially Jewish donors. So I think this is what sort of brought it to the forefront. But yeah, Republicans for a long time have said, look, this is nothing more than a wing of the Democrat Party and the progressive wing of the Democrat Party. Why are we funding them?
Final beat, you go woke, you go broke?
Yeah, it's a lever, right? Like, I mean, it's just like the news. The new is what leads. This is a way into a broader reform that Donald Trump wants to have, which is he believes that these institutions are way too far left, way too woke, and this is a way into it. And again, the average American looks at this and says, Harvard gets $2 billion from the federal government? What?
Holy moly.
That's a fight you want to have, politically speaking, if you're Donald Trump.
All right, Chris, Mick, thank you so much. Stick around. We'll chat some more.
Next time we'll let you talk.
Exactly. I'm going to talk right now. Here's what's coming up on the Hill. Make sure you stay tuned. Big show for you tonight. A spring break trip in Denmark goes horribly wrong. The country detaining 2 U.S. college students after an Uber ride lands 2 Americans behind bars. What happened that has gained international attention? And Trump faces off against Harvard. The president freezing $2 billion in grants. How this funding fight quickly escalated. We'll dive even deeper. Plus, math, reading, and religion. Several states are pushing to display the 10 Commandments in public schools. I'll talk live with one pastor who's actually against the idea. Stay with us. The Hill is coming right back.
Thanks for listening to NewsNation on the go. I'm senior national correspondent Brian Entin. We're here for you 24/7 on the NewsNation app or on your Alexa. Just say, play NewsNation.
Welcome back. I'm Anna Koyman, filling in for Blake Berman tonight on the Hill. 2 American college students remain in Denmark after being accused of assaulting an Uber driver while on spring break in Copenhagen. Owen Ray, a student at Miami University in Ohio, and his unnamed friend have now been released from a Danish prison, but their passports have been confiscated, preventing them from coming home to the United States. Owen Ray denies any wrongdoing.
We were both just very shocked about the fact that we were being arrested over this incident. We had done nothing wrong. We were the victims of an attack.
So this comes as the United States and Denmark continue to battle over Trump's ambitions to acquire Greenland. And now there's a new push by some of the richest tech entrepreneurs in the United States to start what they call a freedom city in Greenland to skirt regulations that slow down business growth. The proposal seeks to establish a libertarian utopia on the world's largest island. This city could become a test site for colonizing Mars due to the harsh environment there. Well, joining us now to talk more, Carla Sands, former U.S. ambassador to both Denmark and Greenland from Trump's first administration. We are so fortunate to have you tonight. Great to see you.
It's great to be with you, Anna.
And you'll be on the panel later as well. So let's first talk about these two Americans that are stuck there. What's going on? Is Greenland messing with us?
Well, I think Denmark's
Denmark
with us.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think, American citizens deserve due process. Denmark doesn't do this. They don't imprison people for small things like this. They don't hold passports. I lived there for almost 3.5 years. I never saw anything like this. American citizens, they have rights. I think the State Department needs to step in because we know that friends don't treat their citizens of friends like this. And I think that Denmark is doing this because they're upset about Greenland.
And you think the State Department needs to step in?
100% right away. They need to step in and pressure Denmark. Denmark should be careful.
Yeah, all right, let's zoom out a little bit and talk about just travel internationally right now. Are we getting some unwanted consequences from these trade wars? I mean, we've even got British issuing travel warnings. Spain, we've got Governor Gavin Newsom in California begging Canadians to come back as tourists.
It's true. So at the same time as we have so many countries coming and wanting to invest in the United States and foreign companies as well, they want to bypass these tariffs. So we've got, what is it now, $6 or $7 trillion of investment coming in. But the fact is that people, say from Canada, who own a vacation home, I think the administration needs to give them some guidance. Maybe they like to spend the winter there, but now the administration is saying if you're here more than 30 days, we may pick you up and arrest you. They're afraid to use their condo in Arizona or Florida. So maybe the administration could find a way that those snowbirds that like to come every winter can safely come and enjoy their investment in the U.S. and then go home afterwards.
And Carla, on to the Freedom City now in Greenland.
Oh my
is this
gosh.
realistic or is this just a good headline?
I think that, as a matter of fact, I don't like the word utopia. Whenever I hear utopia, I get a little nervous.
Yeah,
because that, right then, it's like a socialist hellhole at some point. But I think it's probably unrealistic. Greenland is so harsh. I don't think people with the means to live elsewhere, unless they're from there and they love Greenland, I don't think they're going to be rushing to live there. It is a really, really challenging environment. There are no roads between two towns. Because of the weather being so harsh, if you make plans with somebody, it may not happen for days. So people in Greenland are very flexible. That's not how the tech world works.
No. And let's take a look at these conditions here. Is this really where you want to set up your family and your business there? Maybe it is.
It's a great place to visit. It is a wonderful place to visit.
Yes.
They're wonderful people.
Sounds like it. And it's a great place for rare earth minerals as well, which is one of the reasons that Trump has his sights set on
tourism.
Greenland.
Yes.
That's right. So how, with this trade war and China saying that it's going to halt its exports of rare earth minerals, how critical is that for the United States?
That is so critical because we need those rare earths for our defense equipment. We need them for our cell phones. We need them for so many things in modern living, our car batteries, electric car batteries. So we're going to have to find them. Greenland's a tough place to get them from. There are many places easier to get rare earths. So I think the Greenland statements by President Trump is all about security.
All right. Well, stay put because we're going to have you stay for the panel as well. Carla Sands, thank you so much. And right now, we've got some live pictures from Chicago. Former President Biden is back on the national stage. He's speaking at a national conference attended by Republican and Democratic lawmakers. It's his first public address since leaving the White House. Let's listen.
An appeal to reporting fraud. It all became more efficient and more effective. And I'll bet it made your jobs easier, too, in the process. Now, these achievements may not sound so glamorous to most people, but they're absolutely essential.
And there you have it, former President Joe Biden there. And there is still so much more ahead on the Hill. Make sure you stay tuned for that. Ivy League showdown. Trump issues a tax threat to Harvard after the school refused to comply with White House demands. Is the government overstepping its authority? A top member of the House Education Committee will join us live. And from one education battle to another, listen to this, friends. Should public schools display the 10 Commandments? It will soon happen in yet another state. But I'm going to be talking with one pastor who actually opposes the idea. That's next when The Hill returns.
You're listening to The Hill on NewsNation's audio stream. Available 24/7 on the NewsNation app. Or just say, Alexa, play NewsNation.
Well, there you are. Welcome back to The Hill on NewsNation. I'm Anna Koyman, filling in for Blake Berman. And tonight, the nation's wealthiest school is duking it out with President Trump. Harvard's coffers taking a hit after the Ivy League refused to comply with the president's demands to eliminate DEI, restore merit-based admissions, and to change how the school addresses anti-Semitism. Harvard's president, Alan Garber, penning a school-wide letter writing, quote, "The university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights." Hours later, the federal government froze more than $2 billion worth of grants and contracts. If the situation continues to escalate, the Trump administration could withhold roughly $9 billion. President Trump writing on Truth Social, quote, "Perhaps Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it keeps pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired supporting sickness." And former President Obama, a Harvard Law alum, also weighing in, saying this: Harvard has set an example for other higher ed institutions, rejecting an unlawful and ham-handed attempt to stifle academic freedom while taking concrete steps to make sure all students at Harvard can benefit from an environment of intellectual inquiry, rigorous debate, and mutual respect. Joining us now to talk more, the Republican Congressman of Utah, Burgess Owens, Vice Chairman of the Education and Workforce Committees. Congressman Owens, great to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Same here, Anna. Looking forward to chatting with you for sure.
So 5 of your Republican colleagues on the Education and Workforce Committee went to Harvard. What are they saying about all this?
Well, those are Republicans that are conservative realize the same thing that we're realizing, that Harvard has lost its way. The mission to Harvard is to make sure we get the best minds in our country to make sure we move our country forward. Unfortunately, it's been indoctrinating our kids over the last few decades, where kids coming out without a real sense of who we are and pride in our country. So at the end of the day, Harvard is a private school, and they should be able to teach the way they want to, but they don't deserve, they're not entitled to taxpayer dollars. They have $53 billion in endowments. So let them use their endowments, continue to do what they're doing, and I think it's a great idea. Just they're a private institution. Let them be treated like private institutions, and not get the tax breaks that they're expected to have when we expect them to be working with our kids in a certain way. So we're going to make sure we all get that tied down for sure.
All right. Look, I hear you. So are you saying this is just for institutions like Harvard, which may not be, complying and bending the knee to President Trump? Or are you saying private institutions across the country should not be getting taxpayer dollars?
No, I'm saying private institutions, if we want a return on investment, and a return on investment means that we're teaching our kids how to produce and thrive in our country. If we're teaching them how to hate, how to divide each other, I think it was Harvard that has actually black-only graduations and gay-only black graduations. That is not the American way. That is a Marxist ideology, and we need to get away from it. So they have an option. Go with the way that our country is designed our institutions in the past to move forward, or if they want to say, I'm not going to do that, then just don't expect taxpayers' dollars.
Look, I'm not sure if you had the opportunity to watch the White House briefing today, but the administration made the issue of anti-Semitism central to their defense of the funding freeze. So do you think they will backtrack on other things like merit-based admissions and eliminating DEI at Harvard?
Well, that's the problem with Harvard is that anti-Semitism is an outgrowth of DEI and all the other divisive ideologies they've been teaching. So we have to get back to merit. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down. Our country is not about looking at each other from outside in instead of inside out. It's about accepting each other, our differences, but also deciding that merit is the way we grow our country. So we have to make sure that all of the above, DEI needs to go, anything that's divisive needs to go, and anti-Semitism, anything that deals with racism in terms of blacks being in only black dorms, that stuff is in the 1960s. We need to get away from that as soon as we can.
And Congressman Owens, I know you're also backing this High Quality Charter Schools Act. Tell us a little bit about that and why you think it's important for our kids in our education.
Because we have to have choice. The reason why we are where we are today is that certain places allowed our parents to have a choice to get out of bad schools. Charter schools have proven themselves to be extremely successful. They're teaching the right kind of thought process, they're thinking respect of others. And you see a charter right next to a public. The charter is always shining out because the kids are being focused on in their education. We do make sure that every child in this country, whether it be charter, whether it be parochial, we have something else called Educational Choice and Children's Act that's coming out. Choice is the bottom line. That is the best way to get merit and make sure that even the public school systems will grow themselves and become much better when there's competition.
Congressman, we're out of time, but just one beat on this, because you know the pushback on this is that these failing schools will fail even further, and kids who are low income and they don't have parents who are going to get online and go through the rigmarole to be part of these charter schools and be part of school choice are going to fall through the cracks.
Anna, I've been hearing that for 50 years. If they're failing schools, they need to go out of business. There's one reason they're in business is to make sure our kids are thriving. Anything that fails in our country, anything that is pushing 70% of failure in terms of reading and writing, don't need to be teaching our kids. So let's not think about the institution. Let's think about our kids. How many kids we're losing while these failing schools continue to give us this whole thing that we need to survive. We need to make sure we keep our black kids here. No, we need to make sure kids are going where they can thrive, grow, and live the American dream. Enough of this institutional focus.
Well, they're our future, and we don't want to be falling behind the rest of the world. Congressman Burgess Owens, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Anna. Appreciate it.
All right, well, at the state level, the battle over displaying the 10 Commandments in public school classrooms has moved its way to Arkansas. A bill requiring the display in public buildings and classrooms is now the law of the land after Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders signed it yesterday. Arkansas is the second state in the U.S. to pass this legislation, following Louisiana's lead. More than a dozen states have made similar efforts across the country, but there is some pushback. Preston Clegg, the pastor of Second Baptist Church in Little Rock, is leading a coalition of clergy speaking out against the law. Pastor Clegg writing this: when the state of Arkansas mandates posting the 10 Commandments in state-funded schools, it violates both separation of church and state and convictional religious liberty. Well, joining us now is that very pastor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And your reaction to this becoming law?
I'm disappointed and concerned, primarily as a Baptist. In my faith tradition, we are very aware of the dangerous toils and snares of state-sponsored religion. We've borne the brunt of state-sponsored religion in our history. And so to have this passed at a state level so that it's in public school state-sponsored classrooms is something that's of grave concern to me.
Well, earlier on NewsNation, we had the state superintendent from Oklahoma, and he said that, look, this is not just a religious issue. It's just about our nation's history and our kids needing to learn that, too. Take a listen.
Kids need to know the role that Judeo-Christian values played in American history. That's not controversial for most Americans, and it's definitely not controversial for most Oklahomans.
So what do you make of that?
Yeah, I've spent my entire career teaching Judeo-Christian values. I think they should be taught in churches and synagogues. In Arkansas, we do not lack for churches. We do not lack for synagogues. We do not lack for clergy who can teach these 10 Commandments and have communities that embody these 10 Commandments rather than sever them from their biblical context and post them on walls in public school classrooms. So I'm all for fostering Judeo-Christian values. I think synagogues and churches are the place to do that.
Got it. You say there's a time and a place for everything, I guess. Well, Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary for the Trump administration, has said that the United States overwhelmingly voted Donald Trump into office, and he campaigned on putting these Judeo-Christian values into place in some ways. Take a listen to this.
The president promised millions of Christians across the country on the campaign trail that he would create a White House faith office when he returned to the White House, and he has delivered on that promise. The White House Faith Office has put together an extraordinary week-long celebration currently underway for Holy Week ahead of Easter Sunday.
We all know separation of church and state is very important here in our democracy. What do you make of that?
Again, I'm very, very concerned. And when we begin to pull the levers of power to enshrine our faith rather than practice our faith in our everyday life and our communities of faith, that's when it begins to feel like our faith is being used more than it's being practiced. And given that we're in the middle of Holy Week this week, I think we need to do some hard discernment about our place in that story and the comfort with which we're willing to pull levers of power to enshrine our faith.
All right, we really appreciate your insight and analysis tonight. Pastor Preston Clegg, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, coming up on the Hill, she's become the face of Trump's crackdown at the border.
Today they're letting me roll with them. We're going to go out and pick up somebody who I think has got charges of human trafficking.
As Kristi Noem touts Homeland Security, is the Trump administration keeping promises made about the border and beyond? The full panel joins me after the break to break it all down.
Bill O'Reilly on Cuomo.
Number one, you're a cheap frump.
America's favorite sparring duo with TV's liveliest, most honest debate.
You have a tie on that goes with nothing else.
Tomorrow at 8, 7 Central, only on NewsNation.
This is NewsNation with a trust rating higher than any of our competitors. NewsNation is proud to be America's fastest growing cable news network. See for yourself at joinnn.com.
Hello and welcome back to The Hill. I'm Anna Koyman filling in for Blake Berman. Well, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has been the face of President Trump's border action and immigration policies largely. But a new Wall Street Journal report out today says not everybody inside DHS is happy with the way she's taking this made-for-TV approach to this important position. Take a look.
We're going after MS-13 gang members. Everybody, I'm here in Arizona, and right at this spot, you can see where the border wall ends. Here at CCOT today and visiting this facility. And first of all, I want to thank El Salvador and their president. We're going to go out and pick up somebody who I think has got charges of human trafficking.
Well, according to the Journal, her travel schedule leaves little time for admin in the office. With us now is the full panel. Mick Mulvaney, former chief of staff in the first Trump administration there in the White House. Dan Cannon, former Battleground States director for the Biden and Harris campaigns. Carla Sands is back, former ambassador to Denmark and Greenland. And Chris Cillizza, NewsNation contributor. Great to see you guys. Thanks again. Hi. All right, Dan, I'll start with you. What do you make of all these photo ops? Good or bad?
Well, I think the photo op and the TV presence of a cabinet secretary is maybe what you need to do to succeed in Trump's administration. She's doing some of the cosplay that I think Pete Hegseth does and others do that Trump likes. But I think the first thing to talk about with the numbers on immigration, those border crossing numbers were already dropping drastically under Biden in the last half of the year. Yes, they've dropped further, but they went from 200,000 a day to something like 60,000 a day under Biden. I think it's unmistakable they're going after that as their number one issue politically right now because the economy is not doing well, because tariffs are not being well received. And I think you'll see more of this kind of theatrics because that's playing well for Trump's base.
Is Kristi Noem doing well, Mick?
This is what she's supposed to be doing. He hired her to do this. I mean, look, he hired television personalities at transportation, at defense, at DHS. He hired people who are good on TV at most places because this is what he wants, and it's working. I mean, as much as Trump might be struggling right now with some of his approval ratings related to the economy, which he's going to have to fix, they're killing it on immigration. This is exactly what he wanted her to do, and it's working.
And it's exactly what he did along the campaign trail. I think we've got some video of him, serving French fries at McDonald's in an apron with his trash vest on in a dump truck. Carla, when the media has the knives out for her, is it partially because she's female, or you don't think that has anything to do with it?
I think it's because she's beautiful and hot. So she embraces her role. She's a great spokeswoman for Department of Homeland Security, but she's also getting the job done. That's the entire cabinet, the entire Trump cabinet is really working, doing the hard work, and then they're great communicators. So I think that the leftist the leftist Democrats, they really hate that they're effective people. They're implementing the America First policies that President Trump wants to.
Chris, I know you read this piece in the Wall Street Journal as well, and some folks are irritated in DHS, reportedly. What do you think?
So I'm sort of divided because, like, some few folks in any organization are always irritated. Like, I mean, you know, like it's like trying to find a journalist who's not super happy about their life. That's basically all of them. So there's always going to be those people. That said, like, I always go back to this quote. It's from 1990. Donald Trump gave it to Playboy magazine. And he said...
You were just reading...
I was reading for the pictures. I mean, for the articles. Oh, my God.
You had that backwards. Take
just
it back.
for the record, I was only 14 then. He said, the show is Trump, and it's sold out performances everywhere. And I think that quote is... Now, this is pre The Apprentice reality TV show. This is pre, obviously, being in office. And I just think that quote is so telling because I do think Mick is right. These people were hired because he saw them on television and thought, I like that, and that's how I sell my policies to the public. So what I would say is, like, yes, I'm sure there are people at DHS who say, she's on TV too much, she's holding these guns, but that is why he hired her. He likes that performative stuff, and he doesn't just like it, he is convinced that is what works with the American public.
Carla, you're dying to get in.
Right, and this is Trump's promises made, promises kept. He is securing the border, just like he's going down the list and you know, he's empowering his people to get his promises done.
And the Associated Press is tracking that. Promises made, promises kept along across all different issues. Let's take a look at immigration here. So they've got securing the border, kept. Revoking visas of pro-Hamas protesters, kept. TBD, still a work in progress. Ending birthright citizenship and the border wall. Dan, I'll give this one to you. As we take a look at a poll as well and the approval rating for Americans and how the Trump administration is handling immigration, still at about 50%, 50-50. Why is that?
Well, I think, to Mick's point, immigration is the strongest place he has politically. But I think some of this is tipping into the place where there's not getting Democrats who might have been willing to take a tough on immigration president as a Republican in stride. It's going so far that they're repelled. So now we're in this polarized place where Republicans love it, Democrats hate it. Independents, though, are getting very turned off on the economy. And the one thing I want to say about the TV personality piece and what Trump is asking for here, he still needs an administration that can deliver and see these policies through legally. They're all getting challenged. The EPA general counsel is a 31-year-old who's ever taken a deposition. There's no BLM director at Interior. They have a hard time getting these policies to stick in courts if they don't have the personnel that can actually back up the style you see on TV.
And Mick, the Trump administration, well, now the Trump administration, but former President Trump, now President Trump, had 4 years to think about it. He knew he would be having some court battles. What do you think of the status right now as we creep toward 100 days?
I think they want the court battles. I think they've laid the foundation for having these court battles. A lot of what they did on the layoffs earlier, or the forced retirements, whatever you want to call it. I'm not using the right term, but when they made those personnel moves with DOJ, they want the court battles. They want to be able to establish, they're looking to sort of expand executive authority. That doesn't make them unique. Every president wants to expand executive authority. You know, Obama did DACA, Biden did student loans, you know, despite what the Supreme Court said he could do. So it's not unusual, but this is by design. You're right, if you don't have the right people in place, and I am a little frustrated here when they don't have experienced people at these key jobs yet, because we are 100 days in, but I still think it's going per plan and they want these lawsuits.
And to Mick's point, just birthright citizenship is the same thing. I know it's we don't know the answer to it yet, but there is no way that Donald Trump thought that the courts would be like, oh, that seems good. I mean, it's, because it's a gigantic fight that's in the Constitution. They did not go into this thinking like, oh, well, that'll just get signed off on. That is an attempt to pick a fight for legal reasons, but I think also for political reasons, right? Because the more he talks about immigration, the better shape he's in. And we've seen after the last 3.5 weeks, the more he talks about tariffs, the worse shape.
All right. Well, we will leave it there. Chris, Carla, Dan, Mick, thank you so much. And here's what's coming up on the Hill. President Donald Trump jokes with the Navy midshipmen college football team at the White House.
The story of this incredible season began last February when the Navy football team entered the weight room for the winter workouts. I wish I could have joined you, but I just never was. I was never too much into lifting weights.
All right. right. Well, the full panel is going to be back with us after the break. Details next on the long-standing tradition that continued today. And coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, Henadoba will be talking to a man who has lived for years on American-made products, from soap to bed sheets to frying pans. No China necessary. Don't miss that at 7 p.m. Eastern right here on News Nation. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to News Nation on the go. I'm Marnie Hughes. We're here for you 24/7 on the News Nation app or on your Alexa. Just say play News Nation.
The oath of office, the spirit of our military has soared to new heights. Today, I'm proud to announce that in February, the U.S. Navy had its best recruiting numbers since 2002. That's a long time ago.
Now, we know that's been a problem, so that's good news. President Donald Trump this afternoon welcoming the Navy football team, presenting them the Commander-in-Chief Trophy, and make time to talk about improvements to recruitment under his watch. The trophy was first awarded back in 1972 and goes to the team with the best record among the 3 college football games between Army, Navy, and the Air Force. Navy had an historically good season in 2024, winning 10 games this year for only the 6th time since the first season in 1897. So Dan, I'll go to you first. This isn't going to get the same attention as the Georgia-Bama game or something, but it's a neat tradition.
It's very. I mean, I'm a huge college football fan. I went to Wisconsin. I saw a few Rose Bowls with Ron Dane when I was there. We've not been as good since then, unfortunately. I'm just glad he didn't drop the trophy.
You went to Wisconsin. That explains a lot. I didn't realize that.
Great Ron Dane reference, too. Former New York Giant. Can I tell you,
please.
This is fascinating. I wrote a book about presidents and sports. And you know who was the first person who sort of made it, formalized the champions and those sorts of things coming to the White House? Ronald Reagan.
Wow.
They had done it before. Occasionally, Jack Kennedy
Gerald
had,
Ford because he was one of the most
because he was sporty. No,
Reagan,
because Reagan loved being around athletes and successful people and realized that it kind of wore off.
Right. Well,
and he understood TV.
And President Trump, he doesn't know a camera that he doesn't like. I don't
Didn't
think
break
either.
the trophy.
But he loves all the
Did not
sports.
break the
He
trophy.
did not break the
Did
trophy.
not drop the trophy.
Right.
We've seen him at the Daytona 500. We've seen him at, I was going to say WWE, but
We
that's
have.
not right.
UFC.
Was it
UFC.
That's
Yeah.
what it is.
And he has been at WWE, too.
Next time, we don't have time to now tell the story about the time we had the Clemson University football team over during the government shutdown. So we had them to the White House, but we couldn't feed them. So we literally emptied every single Burger King, McDonald's, or Hardee's in Washington, D.C. to feed them hot hamburgers.
Yeah, and I was at our
Pulling back the curtain for us.